Hey, Mike, how's it going today?
Hey, Frank, good to see you.
Good, man.
Another week.
Yeah. So, what'd you do this week?
Oh, great week. I actually had clients in town from Wisconsin. So that was cool.
Did they bring you some cheese?
No, but my fun fact, my parents were married in Wisconsin.
Fun fact.
Yep.
Here we go. Oh, we're doing Fun Fact Day.
Yep.
Right on.
But, yeah, I mean, good week running around, kind of.
Right
they're trying to find a winter getaway, and Arizona seems to be the spot for that,
Hell, especially from Wisconsin.
Exactly.
I don't know much about it, but the 70s show I loved.
Oh.
That was a great show, my God.
Love that show.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one, Kelso.
All them.
Freaking
Eric.
Yep.
Red was my favorite.
Oh, he's like, the quintessential dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That conservative, hard-ass dad.
Yeah, just gotta work hard.
The idea that we create and think of when we think... See, that's what media, that's what television, movies, it does. It gives us these ideas that we form, and judgments that we make.
It's
and
also
so
like...
funny.
And not understanding these principles we've been talking about over the... over the course of our podcast.
Yeah.
But we don't understand the principles. We literally turn into Red.
Oh.
And I think by watching that show, it brings to light the humor in it. Because when you think about it, people live that way, and it's not really funny.
Unconsciously.
But when you watch it, it's funny. It really is funny because you realize, my God, we're choosing to do that.
Well,
and the irony in it.
Well, the weird part is, people will watch certain characters and see themselves in it.
Yeah.
And embrace it, like kind of laugh about it and be like, yeah, that's how I am.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like, whoa, do you see that it's a character?
Yeah.
It's a character. And they play into it. And it's kind of like, no. The point is to see it all. You can let that go.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in the role. But it's funny how we tie our self-identity to, humor, upset, depression, introvert, extrovert. We put all these labels on ourselves. And what Frank and I are trying to get everybody to see with us is that all of these labels can easily fall away or easily be clung to, or we can cling to them, however you want to say it. Essentially, these are just thoughts and ideas in our head. To the idea that you are an introvert or an extrovert, that's ridiculous. You can be any of the above. You're not any of it at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we have the ability to transform the energy. So if you can go from introvert to extrovert, but it's understanding that keeps us from being enslaved to it. It's not understanding you think you're enslaved to it. You think it's happening to you, but you realize you're choosing it. Because there are some people that come in that they come to an understanding they're naturally an introvert or naturally an extrovert. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's the character persona. But it's the witnesser who you really are. So then it's like, yeah, I feel more comfortable being an introvert. It's like, okay, play that. But there's no reason you can get out of that.
We just want you to see that, it's
you
part
don't
have
of the
to associate with that role.
No.
It's an awareness to the experience.
Yeah, and once you step back from it, you actually you can play the role even more intricate and better, just like a great actor does. Mm-hmm. You have to dive into it, but it's this understanding.
But what role do you want to dive into? Do you want to dive into a tragedy? Do you want to dive into a comedy?
Yeah.
We have the ability to change and flip the script on every situation and experience we have. And that's the point of perspective shift.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, some people, I heard somebody talk about this, that, and again, this is maybe a metaphor, or probably there's an accurate description of this. I don't know. I'm taking it more of a metaphor because I can't fully prove it. But they said in the past when humans came here, they had a storyline to fulfill. They came in with a certain attribute and a storyline to fulfill. And in this time in space in which we're in now, which we call, the 21st century, as things are shifting and changing, we have the ability to change course, or what people say is renew your contract. Even within the same film you're doing, you can actually renegotiate and change. That's been known to characters going into, like, okay, I'm going to play this role. I'm like, you know what? I want to play this role. And even though the movie is on its way or getting ready, they can do that. So we have the ability now to shift into something that's more preferential from when we come to learn these principles in which we talk about. So then we choose that, or you could simply just stay within the character you're in. One isn't better than the other.
Well, when you understand the principles and how it works, you would never choose to go down such a painful or chaotic road.
Well, you don't know. Why is a Navy SEAL choosing Navy SEAL?
Well, I guess I don't know. I could never consciously be like, man, I really want to make myself sweat right now.
Joaquin Phoenix chose to be the Joker. That's a very dark role. But he knew that. Is Joaquin Phoenix that dark person? Yeah, I don't know personally, but probably not. So when you choose to take that dark role in the understanding of choice, you don't die from that role. You become immersed in it. A lot of people take the role of the Joker, but they don't realize it's a role. They think that's who they are.
We've all been there.
And when you think this is who I am, what you're doing is eliminating the choice of you actually choosing this character. And once we take choice away from individuals, this is where the breakdown comes from. Like, I was discussing this with a person today about like a lot of the stuff going on with COVID and the shot. People believe that everyone should get the shot, and that's their belief, and that's true. And they don't understand why people are fighting against it. I'm like, it's simple. It comes down to one thing. There is an air out there that's trying to take away the choice. Now, there isn't a government that can ever take a choice away. They can make it seem difficult from the outside perspective to take it away, but we have the ability, even if they make it law, to find a way through it. That's how clever we are. So once you start taking choice away from the people, and the people think that you have the ability to take my choice away, this is the breakdown. Now, if you agree with the choice, you don't seem to have a problem with it. But once the choice is in disagreement with you, you will break down just like the other person. So to say, I don't understand it, it's like because you're taking the choice away. So getting back to what we're talking about, when you're choosing the character you're playing, whether it's a dark role or a light role, the choice is what keeps us steadfast and on it. And all of a sudden, if it's a dark role, it doesn't affect me. But when I don't have a choice, even comedy can be dreadful. It really can. But we do have a choice. We have to remind ourselves we're choosing this perspective onto how I look at it. I could choose to choose a perspective that's preferential, even if I'm playing the Joker myself. Some may look at me as a Joker, but
no, but
more of the one from the early Batman,
No, and that's absolutely the truth, because we experience these, moments in life that are painful. Death of a loved one, loss of a job, whatever, and these moments aren't. They don't mean that you wanted to create a moment of sadness. It's part and parcel of the experience, and so like being within that moment, something that you wouldn't deem necessarily you want to experience, you be with it.
Yeah, the reason you don't want to experience, you don't think there's a way out.
That's the thing. That's the knowing part that you were just talking about.
But they're
it's knowing I have a way to perceive this that's not going to allow me to cut myself up, on the inside and be in pain. You choose a way. You see that you have the ability to look at it with a growth, with a wholeness in mind, not in a sense of loss, pain, sorrow. It's a different type of suffering.
Well, it is a completely different type of suffering. It's actually one of expansion. So just, use this metaphor, just like any type of workout. You go in there, there's an essence of putting stress onto the body. So one would call that suffering. Because if you didn't realize you were at the gym, you're like, what's happening to me? Or being tortured.
The growing pains, that's a good example.
Yeah, the growing, anything like that. But when you understand that they're growing pains and expansion, you're in the midst of expansion, you actually utilize it preferentially and you push your way through it. And then the act of pushing your way through it is where the glory comes from. So now when you get good at this, you accept all aspects of it. But then you choose it. Why? Because the moment of holding my breath feels so good when I release the oxygen and then take another breath. So sometimes holding my breath a little bit longer creates a great satisfaction on the other end. Now, I don't do that all day long, but in those moments of like diving under the water and seeing how long I could hold my breath, and then coming up, it almost gives you gratitude for oxygen in a sense. But yet then it's like, oh, let's see if I can expand my lungs or expand the time in which I'm underwater to see that. But is the goal to get to a place? You can use that, but the whole purpose is to have the experience of going under and seeing how little oxygen the body needs to stay under the ocean. If you're actually in the water and focusing on something, you actually will use less oxygen in your body because you're not hyper vigilant onto what's going around. But if you're just focused, you almost forget that you're underwater. Now a couple of people have got in trouble with that and end up drowning if you hear about this. But nonetheless, these are just things you could come into awareness, consciousness. But it's the whole act of doing it is why we do it, not for, like, we might want to think, I want a result of doing this, but at the end of the day, no. Focusing on a result or focusing on a goal allows the whole act to be completed. And that's why we do it.
Well,
that's what life is. Like, you come in here as a child, as an infant, and then you grow through life, You might make it to your 90, you might make it to your 9. It's all expansion and growth.
Well, it's funny, we don't see it we don't see what we're doing for what we're doing. And what I mean by that is all day long we are setting intentions with the universe. And what I mean by setting an intention with the universe is we are broadcasting the feelings that we want to experience. And when I say want, unknowingly want, what I mean is the subconscious thoughts. What thoughts are pumping through our head day in, day out? Is it thoughts of abundance? Is it thoughts of growth? Is it thoughts of success? Or is it the opposite? Because whatever is running around in the head is what we experience out here. And so we're that light, and we're seeing we're experiencing what's going on from within. And I feel like this is something that we often lose sight of.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, once you kind of understand what's going on, because once you say, I want to be successful, you're literally telling the universe, if you will, you're not. Mm-hmm. Because once you claim, I want to be something, it means you're not. Because successful people don't want to be successful. They want to expand their success. They want to expand their wealth, but they don't want to be wealthy. They are. And I don't care where you are, you could proclaim that. People think, I need to get to this mark, this amount of money, this amount of whatever it is you utilize success as. I'm like, that's absurd. Because right when you get there, somebody's going to move it and then change the idea of what wealth is. And then you're pretty much, because your idea of wealth came from somebody else if you're using the outside world. But wealth is an inside job, just like poverty is an inside job. Success is an inside job, just like unsuccessful is an inside job. But once I deem myself to be successful or wealthy, whatever it is you want to do that's preferential, the universe allows it to expand. I have nothing to do with the expansion. But what I deem I am that. I am that. I am wealthy. I am. Will expand as the universe expands along with my idea. So as we sit there and go through the day, I want to lose weight. I want to be successful. We're telling ourselves this. It means you're not at the ideal weight. But you have the ability to tell yourself you're at the ideal weight or ideal look, and that only expands. But you're trying to, within expansion, you can't solidify something because you pass right by it.
It's funny though. It's the New Age stuff of the affirmations and all this. I see what they're trying to do, but Frank and I want everybody to see that is just trying to swap one programming for another. And so what Frank and I are talking about is not sitting there and telling yourself, I'm happy, when you're not. It's finding the feeling of happiness within you, and allowing yourself to be with that.
Yeah.
It's not sitting there saying, "I'm happy, I'm happy." No. You're just mad at that point.
You can do that, and when if you do that long enough, you'll either start laughing at yourself.
But you know what I mean? It's quite
you're like, "Oh shit, I sound crazy."
Yeah.
Well, now you're happy, but don't say it was saying the affirmation 100 times that got you there, because I even suggest to myself and other people, if you're having a miserable day, try to remind yourself, because telling someone, "Well, you have the ability to shift that around," it's like, you sound like a lunatic from that vantage point. But if you can distract someone, says, "Hey, can you bring yourself back to a time when you were happy?" And you go into the imagination, you go into the Rolodex and pull out that time when you were a certain age and was happy. All of a sudden, "Hey, I feel happy." I'm like, okay, it had nothing to do with that time. You just allowed yourself and used the permission slip of that memory to do it, but it wasn't the memory that did it. It was your allowance. Now, the true causation there goes so further too deep for us humans to even articulate on. So there are correlations such as using your imagination to get there. But once I realize that I'm choosing to be happy, I don't necessarily have to reach for that time. I can use this moment now and realize, oh, wow, I fell into the choice of being unhappy. And all of a sudden, I let go of that, and all of a sudden, happiness flows in. It's letting go of unhappiness, which can create the happiness to flow in.
I remember maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, you and I were talking about this concept once, and you described it so well. And you were talking about how
Don't expect me to remember what the hell I said.
That's what I figured. Since birth, we're conditioned, and obviously, that's what Frank and I are talking about with everything. The conditioned of the same experiences day in, day out. But we come home from school every day, and we sit down with our families, to have dinner or whatnot, or you're around your parents, and they ask you how your day was. And when you ask, how was your day, you say, "Oh, it was great, I loved it." They say, "Why? Tell me why."
Yeah.
So every day we're taught that we must have a reason
to
be happy.
Was a great day, yeah.
And this is why we have such a difficult time experiencing happiness first, is day in, day out. Since we were children, we have been taught that happiness comes from something.
Yeah, but also what's cool about this is even though, you could be, 90 years old and these concepts are beaten into you, within 90 seconds you can release all 90 years worth of...
By simply hearing this and it clicking. And it go, oh, what? That is the truth. That's the real... Yeah. You see it for what it is.
That might be the one of the purposes of coming to this planet, of actually coming to that conclusion. Because I think I don't think everyone I've spoken to, there's something innately in all of us, people that I know, that when we're actually pushed on a force, pushed on something to think about something a certain way, it creates aggravation. But we don't know why. It's because it's not my way of looking at it. So we don't have a choice in the matter. So innately we know something's wrong, what's going on, but we're not sure, so we're going to go along with it till we find out. Because no one wants to escape to prison not realizing where to escape to. If you're out in the middle of, say there's a prison in the middle of the desert and you don't know how far the nearest town is, are you going to want to escape it? You might want to find out the information to where the closest town is, because you might run the wrong way. So what we hear is that we're not telling people to let go of their beliefs and let go of their lives, but start to find out what else is out there. And when you do, the escape is the easy part. But if you have nothing to escape to, you're not going to let go of the prison, because at least in the prison, you're being fed, you have a roof over your head, so to speak, your welfare is taken care of. But you're not simply going to climb over the walls and realize there's nothing out here. At least when I'm in the yard, I could talk to people. And I'm using this as a really interesting metaphor, but that's really what it is. So we're in this place. The reason we don't all jump out of it is we have to know what's out there to jump in. We have to understand, okay, okay, they're talking about this concept. I get that intellectually. Now I have to experience that concept. All right, so
and you experience that in the unknown. That's the weird
yeah, but you can do it in drips
paradox
and
of this.
Yeah,
But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
what you're moving towards then is the unknown. It's like allowing yourself to be immersed in the unmanifest. What has not yet to come, resting in the knowing.
Yeah, and essentially everything is the unknown. It's just that we try to replicate every day, and even that becomes unknown, but it becomes dreadful because it's the same thing. It's where the Groundhog Day theory comes from. Things are always shifting and changing, but you're trying to replicate it, and the unknown is you're more aggravated or dissatisfied the following moment. So there becomes a slinger of dissatisfaction from the moment in which you try. The first time you hear a song, oh wow, it's great. By the 100th time you heard it in a row, it's diminished. But you're trying to hold on to that feeling of the first time. That's the unknown. But you're not letting go of something into the excitement. You're trying to hold on to that one thing, thinking
you won't find it again.
Well, because you think it was the first time you heard the song. Some people call it chasing the dragon. I'm like, why are you chasing the dragon? You are the dragon, in a sense.
You are the feeling. We create.
Yeah,
the feeling.
You create a feeling.
It's the same idea with money. Like, people who can have millions and lost it. They'll say, well, who is that person you were telling me about? I think it was like Warren Buffett or somebody. Or no, it was Joe Dispenza. He sat down with his buddy, and his buddy's like, yeah, I lost all my money yesterday. And then Joe was like, oh yeah, and he was like, oh well, I'll just make it more money.
Well, what he kind of confided in Dr. Joe Dispenza was, he goes, I'm the one who created the money. I am not lost. So the money is like, is oxygen. So he's the manifester of it. So, I lost my oxygen. Just breathe in. So money is the same way. Money is a concept, actually. Think about when did money actually come about? So it's a concept. But the creation or the manifestation of it, we are the manifestors of it. So unless you think you lost yourself, the money can return. And people that, like they always say, like the first million is the most difficult. The second is easier. Why? Because you already know you can do it. You now know where prior to getting to that place where you made your first million, it was unknown. But now it's like, oh, I can do it again. But now that gets somewhat boring. So now some people like to, what they call, take risks. I'm like, no, they're just expanding into something. And sometimes in order to expand someone, you have to, an expansion in the physical world typically works in 2 steps back to launch forward 3 steps into the future.
Well, one thing too.
It's kind of physics. Like, I must go down from this place here in order to come up higher from the place I was previous. But when I understand the physics of it, I actually immerse myself into it and push even harder and come up higher here.
What I want to point out, too, is often we look at, people like, let's say, like Bezos or Elon Musk, these people with tons of money, and we think, oh, they have no risk. They're worth so much they have no risk. Where these gentlemen are they're financing such big ventures with like space and technology and stuff like that, risking bankruptcy of their companies.
Yeah, but they don't think that way. If they're thinking on bankruptcy, they will be bankrupt.
That's the thing. People think like, oh, they could never be brought down, and even them, they have to understand they're holding a mental type of.
But even if they spend all their money, like say Elon Musk spends all his money on trying to get to Mars, money's just an object. Money's like gasoline in your car. Yeah, when you drive it, you have to get more of it. But he knows money doesn't run out.
It doesn't run out.
It doesn't disappear.
But we've been taught that it's finite, and
that's what money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah. I'm like, well,
it's energy.
The paper comes
energy.
From a tree.
Is not. Yep.
And we joke about that, but when you actually,
we just got to get out of this limited mindset where we think, oh, they don't have to worry because they're worth this. No. That's a wrong way of thinking. They're wondering, can they sustain? Can they do this?
Well,
Everybody's going through a different type of challenge, but the challenge does not end. It's a
Yeah, but the challenge no longer is about money. It's about in this case, trying to get to Mars, and Bezos is.
You come up with new ways to push, and
and money's a tool. Money's so. Again, we've talked about this on the last podcast in the act or the understanding of finite settings. So, in other words, having a limited setting in order to create infinite possibilities. So we like to play the game of running out of money. Why? Because think about this. If everything could be bought, what's the fun in that? But if I'm like, okay, and then the Beatles said, well, money can't buy you love. So how do I get to love? You have to figure it out on your own. So you create this setting to where even that Elon Musk needs money to build a rocket, but he also needs the knowledge on how to get there. And money will not, he can have trillions of dollars, but if he doesn't understand the physics and get to a greater understanding of how to get there, it doesn't matter how much money he has. Because there have been people that came before him that had more money than him, but they never made it to Mars. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there is this different understanding. He has to let go. Yeah, he has to let go of a concept that once said you couldn't do it in order to say, no, it can be done. Well, how? Well,
I'm working on that.
I'm working on that. But once I get there, I'll be able to explain it to you. But unless you're in my mind, I can't explain it to you. There are a lot of people on the planet need to see Elon Musk sticking a flag on Mars like we did on the moon in order to believe that could be done, right? But yet, you think about the moon landing, everyone that was in the control room watching come up, they knew it's going to happen. They were just praying that no one would die along the way. But it wasn't until America watched on TV, or the world, I should say, watched on TV these people have it. They're like, oh my God, they did it. Well, there was a lot of people that had no doubt they would do it. They just didn't know how it would turn out. So everyone was in the unknown. So where there was a bunch of believers and knowers and faith that it would be done, most people around the world didn't have faith that it would be done. They need to see it. But one man's faith can expand somebody else's knowing into faith. And then after a while, it's like, wow, why do I keep needing someone else to do something for me to believe? Why can't I just do it on my own? That's the supreme aspect of life.
Light.
That's
that
moving into the unknown with faith, with everything from excitement to anxiety. Just move into it and watch what happens. It's amazing. And we do it all the time, but we're hesitant. And we don't put, if I'm at a knowing here and faith is the momentum to get me to another knowing at a higher level, so to speak, that faith, I need to fully immerse myself in that faith in order to push down, get as much momentum as I can. But if I'm riding the brakes, I'm going to do this. And then I have to climb back to where I was and start again. No big deal. Okay, now I get it. I get the physics of it. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you understand this, you fully immerse yourself in the faith aspect, and that's the momentum that leads you to a completely new knowing. And once you get to that new knowing, guess what you want to do? Immerse yourself into a whole new set of faith and unknown, and then you learn to immerse yourself. And the higher you get, like how high does someone have to jump before they get scared of jumping? We all have to break that barrier. Because if I jumped off a 10-foot diving board, doesn't mean I'm going to be comfortable jumping off a 100-foot diving board. But I might want to go from the 10 to the 20 to the 30. I might get to 90 and say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore, But I could keep going, So, but as I move higher and higher, I have to change and be willing to let go of my belief structure. Not that it was wrong. It's no longer useful at the higher level. I have to move into something else, kind of like the metaphor I used. When I was 3 years old, or up to 3 years old, the tricycle was a pristine way of getting around the neighborhood. But at the time I'm 6, 7, 8 years old, I'm like, I got to let go of it. But once I let go of it, I don't need to demonize it. I have to just let go of it in order to excel to the next level. If I want to get to the next neighborhood, I need the bicycle. The tricycle is no longer functional for me.
And this is also how a lot of people get through, poor experiences in high school, poor experiences in college, whatever. They realize that they are not that person, or they don't need to carry around that story, and they don't demonize that story. They understand that was the next level to get them where they needed to be.
Yeah, and when you actually understand these principles, you go back and you don't call that a poor experience.
Exactly.
Because think about all the movies and stories and books people have written and made, and you're going to use the example, made a lot of money on their poor story. If they didn't have that poor story, they wouldn't have been able to make a movie. If that was their choice, they wouldn't be able to get up in front of an audience and make a comic show. Because all comedians talk about the stories and their poor lives, and we laugh about it. Why? Because we can look at it as poor, or we can look at it as ridiculous. We can change it. You could take the same story and make people cry from it, and I could take the same story and make people laugh. Depending on what mood I'm in, I'm going to do that. It's a choice. We're not stuck. If the story is talking about this, you ought not to laugh. Now, our society tries to do that, and this is where comedians and storytellers are brilliant. They kill it.
Yeah, I love it.
Because once you say that you ought not to laugh about that, I'm like, really? Yeah. All right.
Yep. And
hey, did you hear about the one with the, and all of a sudden you start laughing because people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and that's the brilliance of it. Same thing about a storyteller. Like there have been a couple of stories, whether it's a book or a true story, that someone did and say it was a drama, and then someone came along and took it and made it into more of a slapstick comedy, like Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. Most of Charles Dickens' Christmas carols are very dark. It's a dark soul, of Ebenezer being met by the three ghosts, And then one day when I was a kid, all of a sudden Rich Little did a rendition of A Christmas Carol, and he played all the roles. But it was funny because Rich Little was a comedian, so he played every role. He played everyone from, Ebenezer to Tiny Tim. And he played all the roles, but you laughed your ass off. And here is a story that Charles Dickens had written, and most people translate it when they made a movie of it into a dark place. Like, oh my God. But then I'm like, how did this dude make this funny? It's perspective. That's all it is. It's perspective.
Well, when you just said that, it reminded me, do you ever see that old movie from early 2000s called The Scary Movie? And it's like the joke spoof movie.
Yes, with the Wayans brothers, right?
Yeah. So like when you said that, that's the first thing that popped into my head is I'm a big horror movie guy. I love horror movies. I always have.
Yeah.
And so when that movie came out, it made me crack up.
Yeah.
Because it was so funny seeing everything portrayed. It was done so well.
And it's funny because the earlier like horror movies, what made those funny is because it was so ridiculous.
Oh, it was
like where in the world was a guy running around with a chainsaw with a hockey mask on?
It's just we can flip the script on anything.
Yeah, but like people are like, oh my God. I'm like, it's the best was like watching the Freddy Krueger ones where like the man could barely move. Like he's moving at like 2 miles an hour and people are running through the woods like full on speed. And every time they turn around, he's right there. I'm like, come on. I'm like, this is funny as shit, right? Yeah. Like, here's a guy doing like, a 440. He can't get away from Freddy Krueger that could barely freaking crawl through the woods. You deserve to die. Swear to God, like, you can't get away from Freddy.
Oh, that's funny.
The guy's decrepit. You can't even run from him. Come on. Yeah.
Hey, all part of the narrative.
It is. But that's what made me laugh because it's like, all right. But then when they came out with these other movies, they weren't even meant to be horror movies, but they seem realistic based on the life in which we live, which the media shows every day. I'm like, oh my God, this shit can happen. Like Breaking Bad was more of a horror movie than watching Freddy Krueger, because and when I say it's real based on the life that we're living in now. But again, I could still make a parody of it. Actually, did you ever watch Malcolm in the Middle?
Yeah, of course. I love that show.
So, it's interesting.
Frankie Muniz?
Yeah. But did you ever see the little parody they did when Breaking Bad ended?
No, maybe.
So Bryan Cranston, who played
dad.
Hal,
Yep.
the dad, they did this little skit where he's in bed and he wakes up like screaming. He's like, "What happened?" And his wife's, named Lois, like, "What's the matter, Hal?" "Oh my God, is what?" He goes, "I had this weird dream that this guy, a bald shaved head guy, was running around. He's a crack dealer. He was making meth, and that was me. And I hung around with a kid named Jesse. His pants were hanging down his lung. And then the ding, 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 like all this shit." He's like, "Oh my God." And she's like, "Go back to sleep." So they did this thing where he made fun of it. So all of a sudden, now you're looking at Breaking Bad funnier. Mm-hmm. But he fell into the character of Hal, who was a comedian. And then, but obviously,
it's like stepping in and out of the roles too.
It is,
and seeing.
But
he
took it from the vantage point of Hal, not from Heisenberg or Mr. White.
All still
Walter.
The character.
Yeah, he wasn't Walter White. So it's all of a sudden the same actor chose to do. Can you imagine he did Walter White, and it's like, "Oh my God, I had a dream. What? That I was this dad with these 3 freaking obnoxious boys and a wife who's driving me nuts." Well, it might not get much play as the other way.
Well, so what Frank is talking about right now, this is the same way that we step into roles as an employee at work, as a boss at work, as a business owner, as a mother, as a father, as a sister, as a brother, as a friend. We're stepping into roles every single day, and we're changing characters.
Yeah, but not only that, there's nothing wrong with that, but then we actually think this is how we have to act out the role, and I'm like, that's not true.
Nope.
Think about how many, like we talked about Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker. Mm-hmm. Well, since the movie started, even before the movie, you had the Batman on TV with, what's his name, West.
You know
what I'm talking about.
I do.
So anyway, the old show, I think it was like in the 60s it came out. So let's take the character Joker. So you had the Joker was kind of like this laughing character that wasn't really scary, but kind of weird and creepy. And then you came in, then you had, actually, I can't remember all the Jokers that played the role, but I know Jack Nicholson did it. James Carrey did it.
Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey. I call him James whenever I speak.
His real name.
Yeah, James. Yeah, I got to give him a call later.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hey, Jim, I'll call you later.
Yeah, talk to you later, James. Hell yeah. No, but you're right. And then there was, I don't know the name of that one guy who's in Suicide Squad.
Heath Ledger played it?
Oh, yeah, Heath Ledger. He was good.
Yeah, and then, so Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix played the Joker very similarly. But you look at all the Joker roles, they're played from different narratives. Because Jim Carrey's role was kind of funny. It was funny. It wasn't haunting like Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix. Actually, Joaquin Phoenix character, you kind of felt for them because you felt, I should say, for the character because you went into the insight to why the Joker was the Joker. Mm-hmm. Like he was,
and you got to see the mental struggle behind it.
Yeah.
So
what it is every role had a different perspective, but yet it was the same character and the same basis of the nemesis and of what we consider to be Batman's nemesis. But yet it was played differently. So this is what I'm talking about. When we start to understand this, I'm like, okay, here's your role. You mean this isn't how a dad has to act? I'm like, nope. You can choose how to act. You can choose how you want to do it. Now know your audience because your kids might hate it, but that's always going to be an issue. Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, but if you actually want to be a really good dad, you actually play off your child. Your child will teach you the correct way to be a dad.
That's awesome.
But you have to play. Yeah, they do. But you have to, just like a great actor, how a great actor plays off the other actor is by paying attention to the other actor. They don't let the other actor control them, but they actually use the other actor's information to come back, just like a jiu-jitsu master or anyone that does jiu-jitsu. I use somebody else's energy to throw them. I don't try to muscle it. So using that utilization of it and transforming it, this is what we come here to. But if you say, this is how I must act, it may work in some cases, it may not. But you're trying to fit this And a lot of people are trying to fit this way of being into this world. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You got to chisel it. You got to create it. You got to be your own piece.
And most importantly, free flow. You flow with it. What Frank's talking about is like very rigid.
Why isn't this working?
Yeah, we always say it has to work only this way. And the mindset needs to be, I don't understand the way it's going to work. I just know it will.
Yeah, it would almost be like if you were, watching TV shows like Father Knows.
I'm trying to break it down super simple.
Yeah, but like if you're watching TV shows like Father Knows Best, and then you watched enough of those when you were a kid, and then you have a child. Now you try to act like that, and your kid's like, Dad, what the hell are you talking about? Like, he's got an Argyle sweater on. And
it's true. Well, it's like this
Son,
weird...
can we sit and talk, please?
It's a very weird paradox, and again, this kind of goes back to the conditioning of us understanding that or being told, why, do you feel this way? It has to be something out here. But this idea of thinking that, I guess what I'm getting at is when we come from within with it, it's a much more organic.
Actually, when you stay in the moment, you actually respond to the outside world brilliant. So you become like this. What's the word I'm looking for? But you respond in the moment. So you're not actually, because if you preempt something and it doesn't turn out that way, you're lost. So if I actually write up a speech, and the speech is geared towards say a bunch of professionals, and I show up, it's a bunch of high school kids. Do I not perform the speech? No. I have to have another speech based on the topic of what I'm talking about, so I have to know my audience. But you can't write a speech until you're in front of the audience. That's how I look at it. So you show up, and you ad-lib, so to speak. So a lot of great scenes in movies, yes, they were written to set the momentum, but all of a sudden the director just allowed the actor to feel how they were in the moment. And that was the most brilliant thing. And it's like, how do you do it? Well, I let go of having to do it this way, because when I showed up on the scene, something happened, and I went with it. And no one could anticipate that happening. But it did, and thank God we were filming, and thank God you went with it rather than cut. You weren't supposed to trip. By that person tripping or saying something different, they came back and it made the scene more brilliant than any writer could have done.
That's the resting in the knowing. That's not.
You
don't have to know how it's going to work out. You just have to know.
You don't even want to know.
That's it. That's the paradox I'm talking about. It's
how fun.
You no longer focus on how it needs to happen. We're so caught in a linear way of thinking. You don't focus on how it's going to happen now. You more so focus on a knowing of.
You focus on the excitement moving into the unknown.
Yeah. It's an opposite way of looking at it. It's, I don't know how, but I just know.
Yeah,
and it's an excitement. It is an excitement. It's a knowing. It's a wholeness and a knowing.
It is exciting not knowing. Whenever you went into a place where you knew what was going to happen, the excitement diminishes. Now, you fool yourself, you knew it was going to happen, because it never really happens the way you think. But you go in there, and because you think you knew what happened, you actually force the energy to happen in that particular way or in that set of circumstances. And all of a sudden, there's this kind of like blasé way about it. But when you head into the unknown with no reference point, no insistence on how it's supposed to turn out, that's the ultimate excitement. Why do you think children are excited during Christmas, Hanukkah, their birthday, whatever holiday is, a kid gets a gift? Even though the child asked for the gift a week ago, a month ago, it doesn't matter when it was, they still show up like, what the hell is in that big box? And they're like, oh my God, they're freaking, and they rip it open like, oh my God, this is what I wanted. But we become adults like, yeah, I know it's in that box. I guessed it. But I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to be like, oh my God, okay, whatever's in that box, I'm going to enjoy and have excitement. We have the ability to do that. We don't have to go back to being children. We just have to go into the unknown. And then you start to look at things differently with more wisdom rather than ignorance. Because a child child's bliss comes from ignorance, where a wise person comes from just letting go. There's always ignorance no matter where we are, but we actually have the ability to become childlike again through wisdom.
That's the goal.
Not through and wisdom is really knowing you don't know.
It's okay.
But once you think you know, it's like, what happened here?
Well, we're raised in this very odd culture that like not knowing is a sign of weakness or stupidity or not being prepared. It's got so many odd connotations. So people try to know everything before moving forward with something. So in order to start a business, I must become a janitor, a cook, an accountant, and a CPA. It's like, come on. Like,
how many classes do you take before you actually launch yourself into the career?
You will never be prepared for whatever you're moving towards. You just move into it.
Yeah, because before the idea of what we call college came about, because there were ways of like contemplating philosophies and like you do something. But before that happened, the craft actually began, and then the interim of actually discussing it to a higher level from the journeyman to the apprentice came about. But they didn't talk about it prior, because the journeyman wouldn't even know how to start in with the apprentice if the apprentice had no idea what the journeyman was talking about. Here's a hammer. Grab it. See that thing over there? Swing at it and put that nail into the wood. Boom. Okay. All right. Slow down there, kid. Grab it like this. Use the wrist. But until the kid took the first swing, the journeyman didn't know where to start with the child or the apprentice, even to have the intellectual conversation on how to swing a hammer. But all of a sudden, now we're sending kids to college without any outside experience. Some kids, they'll go, no, you have a job, and they're going to business school, and they never even worked. The idea is kind of lost.
And then they get out of school never managing anything, but
they know the concept of business, but who knows business more than a business person?
Exactly.
The kid hustling on the street knows more about business than the professor at Harvard Business School, theoretically, but probably actually as well.
I know exactly what you mean. It's funny, these people out there.
And I'm not here to knock it. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is it that we're here to do? I'm here to have an experience, not talk about experience I may have. And that's interesting, because a lot of colleges that will pull somebody in, they'll do an honorary, give someone an honorary diploma in order to come to speak to their students at their business school. And it's like, why do you have to give them an honorary? Well, they didn't actually go to college to get to business school. I'm like, so why are they coming here to talk about it? It's a very interesting, and I'm not saying, I'm not knocking it, but when you start to think about this, doesn't mean it's wrong, but there's something that you can figure out that then you can realize, okay, I'm going to do this for the experience of it. But the knowledge will always be there as I move towards it. But I must experience something in order to know it. But I can intellectually discuss something to get me into the movement of the experience. That's where religion comes in, right? Religion can help me move along the path in order to find this higher plane. But at some moment, I have to let go of the religion in order to find it. But the religion can excite me enough to go have the experience. But until you have the experience, you have no idea what they're talking about.
For me personally, religion always played a role in my life growing up. I was raised a Irish Catholic family, but went to all boys Catholic high school, middle school Catholic school, no sex ed.
What middle school did you go to?
St. John Bosco.
Oh, you went to St. John Bosco?
Yep.
All right.
But personally, for me, I found myself.
Did you say no sex ed?
No sex ed. We didn't have sex ed. They had growing in love.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you,
I grew up. They called it growing in love.
I know you tell me that. I remember you told me that a couple times ago. But what's funny is even the sex ed that we had in public school.
Yeah.
It was, when I look back now, it was kind of funny, like the information they taught us, because, it's just like, obviously they talked about, how a baby was born and the biology of it, and that was all good. But like, why didn't they bring in like a, I don't know, porn star to no, I'm just kidding. Karen, I'm just joking. Yeah, like to really tell me how this is going down.
Well, it's funny. It's kind of like
they figure you'll figure it out for yourself.
It's kind of like the DARE program,
Yeah.
Come talk to a bunch of kids who don't know anything about drugs and tell them everything about drugs.
It's like,
so they just want to
be
like, what's that? And that's what they're.
Because think about this. We have a driving instructor, but we don't have a sex instructor, right?
Well, it's funny.
I'm gonna start a whole new program at the high school level, right? It's like, okay, girls go over there, boys go over here, and you get like a porn star to come in and help out. I'm gonna sell this to the school board.
I guess where I was going with all that is
before Frank took a wicked left turn.
Well, I guess I was trying to say, like, I remember drifting away from religion because I saw it as like, I'm like, there's a lot of gaps here. And I remember saying to myself, like, I know that, quote unquote, and this is me looking at it from a very third dimensional way, that Jesus would not, have that viewpoint about this type of person, or I just, like, there are certain ideas that I look at within the church and I disagreed with, and so I found myself further and further away. And then as I began to understand these concepts and come into them, I see this. I saw and the value in what a church offers someone in that experience, and they're accessing it a different way from me. And just because they're accessing it a different way does not mean there is a right or wrong, and it's just a connotation my mind puts onto these ideas. And if you experience this oneness, this wholeness that Frank and I talk about, this silence, this being, how you get there does not matter. And I guess also another point on there is you start to see why that religion was created. And I guess this is more of an opinion, but what the concepts that Jesus was talking about is he's trying to have us realize what consciousness is, what we are, what we're capable of. This tool, this body, this power, all can do as I have done and or greater. Like, that is so powerful. And it's him saying, guys, what I'm doing, you all can do. Jesus was an enlightened human being and was crucified because back in that time we didn't know what enlightenment was. And so we hung a man on the cross simply out of ignorance because we thought he was witchcraft. We thought, who's this person claiming he is all? It was a time period. And then this story was taken, and then a religion was created around it. And I see the value in the word of the kingdom of heaven and what Jesus was talking about. So I have this newfound respect for the idea of God, Jesus as a human, and what he stood for. I look at it so differently now. And now what would have been an uncomfortable feeling when somebody talked about God is just a new perspective for me.
Yeah, because if you actually run the other way, you didn't get anything. So a lot of times school, like even if you went to business school, I'm not saying don't do that, but it's your job.
I went to business school. That was for college. My degree's in business.
There you go. All right. So help us out here.
Let's get some of this money into the market.
Jesus. So, but it's our job then to have the experience, which is what you used earlier. It's filling in the gaps. There's always going to be gaps. But like when I tell a story, like even on the show, people listen. I'm like, okay, wow, that's really good. I'm like, you got to fill in the gap. We can't do it for you. We might talk about it and something might click for you to go have that experience into the unknown without having to know. And then you're like, wow, I stepped in. I knew what to say. I knew what to do. I knew how to respond. But yet it was exciting and exhilaration. And now I can do this with everything, every moment of the day, if I don't forget that I have the capacity to do this. That is the ultimate experience. You are the only one that can have it. I can't have it for you. I can encourage you that you have the capacity and ability. Everyone has it. Everyone does. I know everyone does. But we just have to come to know that to the level in which it's used for you. Like I'll read books about people or watch interviews or watch documentaries and stuff like that about what people do, But what they do isn't really my concern. It's how they handle what they do is my concern. That's what I'm talking about. So
It's not the details.
no,
And that's
not where they
a great way to say it,
climb
right?
Mount Everest or meditated in
It doesn't
in
matter
a
what
cave.
form it takes shape in.
No, it's their outlook on to climbing Mount Everest or, sitting at the base of the Himalayas in some mountain meditating or sitting there being calm in New York City. It's how they viewed it, not what they actually did where they were.
See, okay, so I don't know why this just popped into my head, but I remember watching.
I'll tell you why.
I remember watching this.
It's how the universe works, baby.
American, what's that? Like America's Got Talent or something like that.
Yeah.
But they brought this group on, and I believe they were from, I want to say China. And they were like an acrobatic group, and they were gonna like dance for like the Olympics or something. But they did martial arts mixed with like dance and like acrobats, and I have never seen such focus and energy. The way that they like would run up each other's backs, like climbing one up one another, and then like flip, and we're talking like 30 feet. Things you would say are impossible, but the way they're using what was that word called? When we use our bodies to like those people who do those base jumps and like the jumps off of the walls.
Oh, parkour.
Yeah, parkour.
Yeah.
It's using gravity like with you. It's moving with.
They understand the dynamics of gravity.
They understand the dynamics of physics and gravity. So, anyways, I'm watching this, and again, it doesn't matter what it is. You can see the intense amount of focus, skill, movement. It creates such beauty and awe. You have nothing but just to be and to witness and to experience. Like, oh my goodness! And you see this in magic. You see it in a ton of different stuff. It allows you to truly witness.
And know this:
awe.
you cannot be in awe of something like that unless you understand it to a degree. You don't necessarily need to be run up somebody's back or do ballet. You don't need to do that.
It doesn't matter
but
what
there's
it
an
is.
attribute of you, and I don't care what you do as a career or occupation, you can take that same intensity and focus and put it into that. Because you wouldn't even understand what they're doing, and you wouldn't enjoy it unless you had the capacity to do that yourself in some form or another. So there is something innate in everyone. That's how we recognize that, and all of a sudden we recognize it, and then we can defeat ourselves by saying, "But I can't do that." I'm like, you don't need to do that.
That's getting lost in the details. Why would you need to do that in order to experience it?
I don't. The exhilaration
experience
is yeah.
Other experience, and that's the getting lost, and it has to happen this way in order for me to be accomplished. That's where everybody is getting stuck. Is I picture it this way, so it's not. If it's not happening this way, I must be upset. I must be sad.
And where'd the idea come from? It must happen this way.
Conditioning.
Cause it came from
Media,
the outside world.
projections of our family, friends.
It's the outside world. So someone said that person there is excellent at what they do. So then this narrative
I
came
want to
in.
be excellent.
Yeah, so now you have to do what they do. So now you try to
mimicking.
Yeah. But then you find out, it's like, well, were they trying to be that way, or there's something they just pulled them into it? There's a whole different variances. We don't know the true causation of it. But it's not about that. It's not about what people do. It's how they are when they do it. And that's when people ask me, so, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? Because they're reading me, thinking I'm good at a certain thing, and I'm like, listen, it's not what I do. It's how I feel about what I do. Because you're already anticipating what I do, and you're trying to get me to like, I remember when I was young at the gym, you'd see, I go to the gym, and I see someone, whether it was lifting weights or boxing, and you see someone really good, like, hey, what do you do? How often do you hit the bag? Like, that has anything to do with it. It really has very little to do with it. There's some correlation there. But you see a big guy, how much weight do you lift? It's like, what? I could lift the same weight or get to a point of saying, wait, I'm not going to look like that because that's not who I am. But the question is like, I want to enjoy doing this. Well, enjoyment is perspective. If you think you have to do it, you're going to take the enjoyment out of it. But heading into the unknown, I don't have to do that. It's just something we do.
So how do we head into the unknown?
Easily. It happens
We got to
every.
slow it down. That's what I do.
Well, you cannot not head into the unknown, but you're either heading into the unknown with excitement or fear, or blah.
I guess I'm saying, what are some like techniques? So like for me personally, I like to slow things down. You know, kind of take a breath and bring myself.
Oh, you're talking about like what do you do like
just technique wise? You know what I mean? So we keep talking about getting into this moment of presence, or allowing ourselves to be a knowing. What is that? What is that? It's calming yourself and getting out of the rhythm of the mind.
Yeah, there's a huge correlation, which we can almost say a causation, but we don't really know. There's a huge correlation with anything we do. Being calm is the greatest place to start. Whether it's an athlete or someone getting ready to do a speech or an actor trying to get on the set and perform a role, the first thing they're told, they take a breath and they try to calm themselves, because in that state of calmness, you can control your faculties. But when you're all over the place, that's where you're being driven, So, yeah, being calm, going into the unknown with excitement will give you excitement. There is a correlation to being calm.
Absolutely.
But how do you be calm? How do you be calm? How do you know to be calm? Is because you know everything's going to work out. When you know everything's going to work out, the nice byproduct of knowing everything's going to work out is calmness. You don't have to get into it. If I know everything's going to work out, I don't even need to meditate that morning.
See, everything is a kind of a chess match between you and the mind. When you start to see it, you go, you're constantly pushing yourself into checkmate, going, hey, that feeling, that thought, let it go. That attachment, let it go. This is the workout, if you will, that you kind of do. That, at least me personally, I experience.
And then when you realize you're the one playing yourself in chess, walk away from the board and go about your day.
Exactly.
And that's really realizing you're the one. When you realize
you see the game.
Yeah, when I realize that when I step into the unknown, it's all going to work out. I don't need to preset the calmness. I become calm as I step into the unknown.
It's funny. You have to see it, and then you.
Yeah, because when I remember first doing getting up in front of audiences, doing like public speaking type stuff, I would literally have to go meditate and do breathing exercises, distract myself, and to realize I'm going to be out in front of a couple hundred people or what have you. Mm-hmm. And I would go through this routine, and what happens, it would get me on stage, and the second I started talking, within a couple of minutes, I naturally became calm. But then I realized, I'm like, that was anxiety the whole time. Like, because, I did a meditation 5-10 minutes before, but the 2 days before that, I was in a wreck. Because I couldn't go from this 2 days prior to speed up to the 10 minutes of the meditation. At least I thought so. But then I got so good at it, I didn't even need to meditate. I just stepped on stage, because every time I did, it wasn't the 10-minute meditation prior. It wasn't the breathing prior. It was stepping into the unknown every time. Because once I started talking and stuff came out, I naturally calmed down, because I knew it was going to work out without knowing. And that was it. So I stopped having to meditate. People are like, you get nervous? I'm like, I only get nervous if I forget the principle here. And the principle is, I know nothing, but everything I need to know will show up in the moment in which I need to know it. And I keep everything open. I'm open to everything. And when I'm open to everything, I know my audience. I know what to say. I know what to do. I don't need to distract myself from that concept. Although at a point in my life it worked. But then I got to a place where I don't need to do that anymore. I know it's going to work out. When I know it's going to work out, the natural byproduct of is calmness. And the natural byproduct of calmness is less energy is being exerted. And I'm actually in the gap and then expanding into the field simultaneously. And that's a brilliant place to be.
It feels right. It's our most natural state.
It does. But I did play the game of doing this. And so like religion teaches us, do
this or that.
Yeah, so
This or that.
yeah, there's doctrinations into do. If you do this, the sacraments within the Catholic Church, you do this. But along the way, it's not that they're wrong, but along the way, you have to detach from it to actually fully experience it. So, like, if I was never told, again, go to the gym and lift the weights, the expansion would happen. But when I started letting go and enjoying it and stop saying I have to do it this way, this is when the results became really good. But yet, at some point, someone had to tell me what to do, and then I had to make it my own. Just like, I had to read a book in order to write a book. But once I read the book, it let me know I can write a book. But I have to let go of how to write the book from somebody else, because then I just become their editor. I'm not a writer. So I have to let go and say, okay, reading that book lets me know it's possible. Now I'm going to tell the story the way I see it. And if I close my eyes and go to the unknown, the story comes to me in a way it never came to anybody else. But that's the purpose of it. It really is. Like, at some point you have to let go and get out. Like I knew this woman that, I remember she was big into writing, and she's writing books. She goes to all these, she had 4 writing groups at once. And it was weird because I was so ignorant to writing, I didn't know I needed to join one. I already published my first book at the time. And she's like, oh, so when you had people critiquing, I'm like, well, no. I'm like, I wrote the information I felt was needed. I'm like, and especially what my first book was about, it wasn't, I don't know, like, how do you critique it? It was what came through me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's perfect, whatever, but it's perfect the way it came through. Then I'm thinking, I'm like, when are you going to launch? Like the people in your group could be aggravated that day and just pick it apart until you go home and redo it. Like, that might be a process or a method, but to me, it's not necessary. But if you feel it's necessary, but all of a sudden, here I am, this woman, like, spent her life wanting to be a writer, and she never published anything. And here I am, I had no idea I was going to do this, and I was ignorant enough to know that I don't know anything, and I went ahead and did it. And I'm like, oh. And then people are like, how'd you do it? I'm like, I just wrote. What do you mean? I'm not saying I wrote a great novel or whatever. That's not for me to say. That's for somebody else that reads it. But I didn't think about it, so my ignorance is what allowed me to do it. If I took writing classes, I don't know if I would ever wrote the book. I might have talked myself out of it. And it's weird. So when we step into the unknown, you'll know what you need to know based on where you are and what to say and what to do all the time. But when you study and know too much, I wouldn't do that. Why? I know too much. What do you mean? It's not going to work out. Well, why isn't it going to work out? You know how people wrote books like that and no one ever read them? Oh, shit. Okay, thanks for that information. And then you buy it and you don't do anything with it. But know this, the universe wouldn't give you a spark of interest to write something if they knew, or I say they knew, the universe knew that you were the only one going to read it. Nor did it ask you to go ask for advice for somebody else. That is a trained thought. Because nobody really knows. A true professor will profess onto you that you have the ability to do it, and he'll give you examples. But you have to let go of it. Because you got to, in order for the professor to become profound in their world, you have to excel the professor, or else they didn't really do a good job. If no one becomes more successful than the professor, you don't really have a good professor, nor the professor wants you to succeed way beyond the goal in which they were. That's how they know they profess their information well. Not, this is what you need to do. You can't step out of this. You got to do this. That is not professing. That's containing. And information is not meant to contain. It's meant to lift. But then you take and add to it. And this is why we're here. But you can only do that in the unknown. Because when we know too much, I wouldn't do that. Why? I know too much. Oh, I need to not know in order to move on.
a lot of us get stuck in that area too when we share our dreams, our goals with our parents, with our loved ones, with our neighbors. I heard a saying once, we were taking business advice from somebody, making $35,000 a year. Why are we why are we taking business advice? From the guy down the street.
There's nothing wrong with making $35,000 a year, but a lot of us
crush our dreams because somebody says, "Oh, you could never do that," or your parents will say, "I don't know if that's a safe idea." We allow these thoughts and projections of others. What those are our internal projections.
Yeah,
and we're witnessing them, we're experiencing them, and until you ground yourself in a knowing, you're gonna see this and you're gonna experience it. It's funny how those feelings disappear as you become more one with yourself, as you become to know thyself.
It's true, because when I'm teaching a variety of different things I'll teach, what I first start out with is almost like the philosophy behind it prior to the technique in which I'm about to teach. Because the technique I'm about to teach is my technique. You don't necessarily need that technique, Like you think anyone that trained anyone in any sport, they showed them their technique, but then the athlete themselves has to create their own technique out of that technique, So you have to change it. But it's the thought behind it that it's possible. That's what the true coach or the teacher is teaching. I was taught those things, and that's what I'm continuously teaching. I don't tell people, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you'll be successful. And all of a sudden, you did this, you did that, you did this, and all of a sudden, I'm not successful. You must have done it wrong.
Well, that's what college is. And that's, I went through that experience.
Yeah, but
I did this. Wait, why aren't I happy? I went to college, got a job, bought a house.
And why aren't I happy? And it's not college. It was somebody said.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give an example. Yeah. Like what we experience.
You can do all those things, but if someone proceeded and says, do this, do this, do this, but do this with excitement, do this with excitement, do this with excitement.
Oh, the difference would be different.
Then the success is yours.
Yeah. Oh, my.
Whether you go to college, whether you don't go to college.
Different that experience would be.
No matter what you do, when you enter into with excitement, moving to the unknown, you actually open up. Because the reason we're unknown, when we're children, because no one told us we know enough, so we're always open to learning. And then somewhere it's like, okay, by the time you graduate college, you should know all that you need to know. Now go experience it. So all of a sudden, when you start getting to college, you come out of college and someone's talking about something. Oh, that's not true. I'll tell you what the truth is. My professor professed this to me, and this is how it is. And all of a sudden, someone else's opinion doesn't matter because I know. Well, what school did you? Oh, I went to Harvard, and I graduated at the top of my class, so I must know better than you. And I convince you, if that's the case, my convincing you will create an oversight onto you, and you're going to collapse in front of me and believe it to be true. But it's really not true. Unless I believe it's true, then it happens. But I only know or need to know what I need to know from my outlook on life, not somebody else's. So the whole idea of trying to be smarter than somebody else is the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's absurd.
Competition is something we create in the mind. It's all mind. It's not. It doesn't exist.
What exists is the concept of fear, which creates competition. The fear is, if I'm not at the top of the ladder, I won't get the view I want. But the truth is, everyone can have their own ladder. I'm like, everyone could see the ocean from where they're standing.
It's a limited way of thinking.
It is.
In a true abundance, you would never worry about the height of a ladder. You would understand.
We do live in a finite, limited world, but we don't have to view it that way. We could view it infinitely.
Well, there's infinite experiences of that finite world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
Like we talked about this last time, but there's 24 letters in the alphabet.
Yeah.
Are we going to run out of books anytime soon? No. Stories will never be stopped. We only need 24 of those symbols in order to create a novel and multitudes of novels.
It's just so funny. So I was watching the news today, and they were talking about like the debt limit in our country, and they're like,
it's insane.
This could crush our economy. 70% of the country wiped, or 70% of the gains, wiped out. Trillions, 16 trillion lost in American, U.S. wealth, 401ks, all this stuff. And they're painting this gruesome picture if we don't raise the debt ceiling. And it's so funny because we play this game like, oh my God, what if we don't? When, of course, the United States is going to raise the debt ceiling. We play this weird game where we act like, well, what if this happened? And we talk about it and we romanticize with the pain, the destruction this economy would feel. And at the end of the day, everything will work out. Why? Because it always does.
But I'm saying everything works out based on how you look at it.
Oh,
so
yes.
If you look at it that you're going to be living on the street, it will work out. You'll live on the street.
Mm-hmm.
If you think when the piper comes calling, you'll collapse, you will collapse because that's the output you're putting out. The universe knows how you feel. You can't lie to the universe. So when you become conscious of these concepts, you wouldn't choose a fearful outlook, but you simply don't know what you're heading into. So again, I mentioned if you head into the unknown with fear, you're going to experience fear. If you head into the unknown with excitement, you're going to have excitement. Knowing these principles, why would you choose fear? So the truth is, if someone says we're all going to hell in a handbag and you believe it, you will find the evidence and you will prove yourself. And I will not argue with you. But I am not in that handbag that's heading to hell with you because I'm choosing a different road, a different route. Even though we're crossing paths on this plane, I could be at a concert, I could be at a movie and love it, and you could hate it. And I'm not going to argue with you. We're watching the same performance, but your perspective is shifting the way you feel about it, where my perspective is shifting the way I feel about it. It isn't happening to you. You're happening to it. So understand these principles. Why would you choose to look at this as not good? And even if you do look at it as not good, you have the ability to transform it like an alchemist that we are in that moment. And someone's like, well, why is it so bad? Well, this and that. I'm like, well, why did you expect it to be that way? Because this has happened to me before. I remember watching a movie. I'm like, this is not a good movie. And I must have been in a grouchy mood. And then I heard somebody talk about the movie. And I'm like, wow, I like the way you explain it, but I didn't get that. I'm going to go back and watch the movie. And hell, if I did, I watched the movie. I'm like, that was a good movie. It's because my suggestibility going into it. Because when that person was talking about the movie, it was like they were talking about a different movie. And I knew enough not to inject. I'm like, what are you insane? That movie sucked. But I realized I was in a sucky mood when I watched the movie. There was no other explanation. And when I changed my attitude, I'm like, I went and watched the movie again. I'm like, wow.
Great film.
Yeah, so before I tell anyone to go watch a movie, I get them in a good mood. So I'm not a liar at the end of it. You know? Because there are those skeptics that I find funny. It's almost like that story that I heard Wayne Dyer say one time. It's like, he moved down to Florida. This is before he moved to Maui. Obviously, he's dead now, but he was living in Florida, and he was walking along the beach. And I don't know if this really happened, but he uses a story, and it sounds good, but I'm sure it happened to some degree. He's like, yeah, I'm walking down the beach, and this couple came up to me. He's like, yeah, I'm moving down here, and I know you've only lived here a short period of time. It's like, what are the people like? And he goes, well, where are you from? He's like, I'm from New Jersey. Well, what are people like there? They're very loving. They're very warm. They open up their front door for us. I'm like, yeah, well, you're going to find the same thing down here. They went along the way. Later on that day, he's walking along the beach. Another couple came up to him. He's like, how are the people down here? It's like, well, where are you from? I'm from Boston. People from Boston. It's like, What do people like in Boston? It's such a pain in the ass. Just want to get out of there. So you got to find the same here. Wherever you go, there you are. So however you looked at the people in Boston opposed to Florida, you're going to find the same. And I noticed there are people, no matter what, they're complaining. Like a person comes in, like, and they start complaining about this. And then I see them a month later and they complain about like the same attitude of complaint, but one was about this restaurant, this one was about getting the nails done over here. And I'm like, and I find it funny because they don't even know they're in this place. Like, life is freaking difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it is difficult if you look at it that way. I'm like, but you ever try doing that? I'm like, and they're like, what, he's smoking something? And it's like, yeah, perhaps I am, Yeah. And then like I'll make them laugh and they get out of it, and because I don't want them to be that way around me the whole time. I'm refused to do that. So I get people to laugh,
Elevate the vibration.
Yeah, and if Frank's a funny bastard, he's freaking a little off his head, but he's a little funny bastard, And but I don't try to correct them. I just don't want to hear it that long. But I find it funny, and I realize I don't want to be the one doing that because no matter what it is, the outside world doesn't dictate how I feel about it. But the outside world is going to come at me, and I get to choose the way I look at it. What the hell's going on here? I'm like, why would you look at the unknown as something wrong? You don't know enough to know it's wrong. You can declare it's wrong, and then as time goes on, you feel like it's wrong, and because you feel like it's wrong, you're going to have the evidence that it's wrong. And you're like, look, this is wrong. I'm like, oh, shit, yeah, it is wrong. And all of a sudden, people agree with you. Oh, my God, look. Then you get that one person that doesn't agree with you. Something wrong with that person. They don't see the wrong in this? How do they not see the wrong in this? Get rid of them, It's interesting, but when we understand these principles and concepts, we can then choose how we look at it. Yeah, if you start out looking, oh, this is wrong, like I did watching that particular movie, and then I heard this one person talk about it, I'm like, I like the way they feel about that movie. I want to feel that way about that movie. I don't want to argue that it sucked. And I watched it again. I'm like, it was a good movie. They brought up perspectives that I never looked at. So I was open to the idea of not liking that movie. I was open to the idea of revisiting it and looking at it differently. And that's the brilliance of life. I can revisit something. I can revisit something I did and not regret it by looking at it differently. And I could step into the unknown without knowing what's going to happen, but look at it like, it's going to be fun. Because everything up till now was unknown.
And it turned out just fine.
Yeah, it did, because I perceive it that way. I'm like, everything works out. Now, everything works out fine as a perception, but everything works out based on your frequency. If life sucks, life is going to sucky work out. It's going to work out in a way like, oh, life sucks. Yeah, it worked out that way. But what people don't understand is they preceded it's going to suck, and therefore it did.
They're writing the story. They're controlling the narrative.
They're controlling how they feel about the narrative that might come up. They really are, and it's like we get to do that.
I'm glad you said it that way because a lot of people, or I should say a lot of us, will not recognize the control of the narrative and that the narrative going on in the head is simply the subconscious mind. And so we allow it to take control over the day in, day out. We wake up with this sweat of, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And when you look back, you're like, oh, my goodness, I've been doing this for year after year after year.
Yeah, because it goes back. Let's dovetail back to the idea what you talked about, something I brought up a year and a half ago, which I remember to remind me.
Conditioning since birth.
Yeah. So, as a child, I went out and played and came home at dinner time and, like, how was your day? It was great.
Why?
Yeah, why was it great? And I'm like, what do you mean? And what did you do?
As if something needed to happen in order for it to be great.
Well, me and Jim were in the woods, we climbed a tree. It's like, oh, it must be climbing a tree that makes me feel good. So you enter into the woods the next day and every day after, and you're trying to revisit, but you're actually looking at the act prior to the feeling first. But it wasn't climbing the tree. You already felt good because you were free. The expression of you feeling good is what made you climb the tree. So when we get stuck into that. This is how we get into this. So what happens is Why was your day lousy? Because this, and this didn't happen. Where did you come up with that concept? The moment I had to explain why I was excited is when I created these doctrines
of why I'm not.
And when one of these 5 things doesn't happen, it wasn't that good of a day. But why? Well, in order to have a good day, this has to happen. I'm like, that is insane. But this is how we come to understand that, because I had to explain myself why I had a good day, and it was because I went into the woods at 8 o'clock in the morning, because we get really intricate with it.
Yeah, if you're there at 8:35, the day's blown.
We're already off to a bad start, and then your friend shows up and he's like, "What are you doing? I needed help getting a tree." These trees, you had to get your friend to launch you up to grab that branch to get higher up in the tree. Because if you could grab the branch, the tree probably wasn't that big, So you're doing that. Now your friend shows up. I'm like, you know what? I'm going home. I'm getting the hell out of here. Let's start tomorrow. Be here at 8. All of a sudden, your friend's like, what? Yeah, be here at 8. Now it's like a freaking chore. All right, we're climbing the tree.
Is that still the same great experience day? No.
Oh,
no.
Now you're just like frustrated.
Yep.
Now you're miserable.
These are just examples of the pretzels we twist ourselves into on a daily basis, as if we are unconscious to the experience going on.
And what
around
happens
us.
is you turn yourself into a lumberjack and you chop the goddamn tree down.
The great news is these concepts like this,
Just like
the
waking
perception, up.
Waking up.
Changes like that. So now you're a witness to this experience, and it no longer takes grip of you.
It doesn't take 8 hours to wake up.
Exactly.
It takes an instant to wake up.
Exactly.
You were just asleep for 8 hours.
Yeah, or 80 years.
Yeah.
Or
if you were asleep for
years.
80 years, it takes an instant. Boom, you woke up. No one knows when they woke up. They just woke up. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Everything is spontaneous. Everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And the unknown is spontaneous, but when we step into there, utilizing the perspective in which we want to utilize, watch what unfolds. It's amazing. It really is.
It's exciting. It's
And then what happens is when you forget it and go back, I'm like, oh, that lousy day. Why? Because I looked at it lousy. I'm like, well, there you go. These principles work. Whether they're working against you or for you, the physics of it doesn't lie. This isn't philosophy we're talking about. This is actual physics. Philosophy is how I just talk about it. There's nothing wrong with philosophy, but philosophy doesn't explain it. Philosophy is my expression about it. We're talking about physics here.
what you put out, you will get back.
What religion you belong to is a philosophy, but the underlying principles in the religion, doesn't matter what religion it is physics. And that's the perspective shift.
Thanks for joining us this week, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and click the link below to subscribe.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. Enjoy.